Alaskans, thank you all for joining us here tonight. We are at the MatSu School Board Borough meeting wide for the all anticipated tonight discussion on what is a woman and the Fair Play Act in our school sports and athletics. And please stay tuned. Please like and share this video. I am going to do my best to keep this up and streaming on all YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter all at the same time. If this feed is not able to keep a solid connection, I will be going to just strictly a Facebook Live only stream, and that will be able to be found on Politadick on Facebook and Politadick Unfiltered, and plus about 16 other pages that I'll make sure also get a link to this particular feed. But right now you can find this on Twitter and YouTube at Politadick. You can find this on Facebook at Politadick and Politadick Unfiltered, streaming to all you live here from the MatSu School Board building for the school board meeting that is to happen today. And on the discussion is what you can read in the title there, and it's leveling the playing field for Alaska athletic sports, and making sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to participate by the biological sex that they truly are versus what their feelings may be. So again, as I've also entitled this, the big question tonight is what is a woman, and they are about to begin.
Good evening. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of June 15, 2022, and ask Member Probasco, will you determine a quorum?
Board Member Hart?
Here.
Board Member Underwood?
Here.
Board Member Berge?
Present.
Board Member Taylor?
Present.
Board Member Larson?
Here.
Board President Ponder?
Here.
And myself, Dwight Probasco, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Member Probasco. At this time, Member Hart, would you read us the board goals, please?
Yes. MatSu Borough School District will be a model of excellence in teaching, learning, and engaging all students. MatSu Borough District prepares all students for success. We believe that the needs and best interests of students drive all decisions. All students can and want to learn. Educational choices and community participation are essential to student success. Goals: improve student success, achievement, and performance. Develop excellent educators and leaders. Use innovative practices to improve the education system. Include families and community members in the education of our students. Promote safe and healthy environments for all. Guiding principles. These guiding principles will drive our decisions and our responsibility to our students, families, and community. Stewardship, accountability, empathy, quality, integrity, respect, collaboration, and commitment.
Thank you, Member Hart. Member Berge, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda in a second. Once we have that approved, I do have a motion to amend the approved agenda. But
I move for the approval of the agenda for the June 15th MatSu Borough School District meeting.
Second.
is there any objection? Hearing none, I would like to put forth a motion to amend the approved agenda by moving item 5, administrative reports. So section A, year review, 4 Cs, moving that agenda item down under superintendent's report so that we have more time and can get to public comment. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Is there any objection? Because it is a motion, I'm just going to go ahead, motion altering, I'm just going to get a voice vote. Member Berge?
Yes.
Member Probasco?
Yes.
Member Hart?
Yes.
Member Underwood?
Yes.
Member Taylor?
Yes.
Member Larson?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. So therefore, we will move that year review 4 Cs under the superintendent's report, so to allow more public comment. With that, Member Berge.
Mr. President, I move that we move the item B under the superintendent non-action item, the long-term strategic plan 2023-2027, from today to August 3rd as was presented in the work session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we will go ahead and take a vote. Member Berge, well, any discussion? Member Berge, we'll move to a vote. Member Berge?
Yes.
Member Probasco?
Yes.
Member Hart?
Yes.
Member Underwood?
Yes.
Member Taylor?
Yes.
Member Larson?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. Any other motions? With that, we will move to agenda item 3, persons to be heard on non-agenda items. With that, Member Probasco, will you please read the rules for persons to be heard on non-agenda items? And these same rules will apply for those persons to be heard on non-action and action items as well, please.
Thank you. Under Board Policy 9323, Meeting Conduct, specifically under the agenda item, persons to be heard on non-agenda items, the following guidelines apply. The speaker states his/her name for the record. The speaker is limited to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker is limited to non-agenda items. Agenda items will be open for public comment as they appear on the agenda. The speaker's comments should be appropriate for all audiences, including school-aged children. The speaker is limited to comments of a general nature, positive or negative, which may not be attributed to any specific individual. Issues involving concerns specific to any single individual should be submitted in writing and given to the board clerk to be resolved. The issue may be determined to be appropriate for persons to be heard, or may be handled in executive session, or may be routed through a more appropriate complaint process. No disturbance or willful interruption of any board meeting shall be permitted. Persistence by an individual or group shall be grounds for the chair to terminate the privilege of addressing the meeting. The board may remove disruptive individuals and order the room cleared if necessary. This is not a question and answer time. Speakers may be referred to the superintendent or designee, or the board may take the issue under advisement. There's maximum 1 hour per meeting.
Thank you, Member Probasco. At this time, we will hear from those that would like to be heard on non-agenda items, i.e. those items that are not currently listed on tonight's board meeting. With that, please come to the front and please state your name, and you'll be given 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My name is Mike Coons, and I'm speaking for myself. This is a following quote from a Fox News item today. Quote, with the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, WASB, decision to cut ties with the National School Board Association, NSBA, more than half of the nation's state school board associations have withdrawn from the group since it sent a letter to the Justice Department to investigate parents for quote-unquote domestic terrorism. Parents have seen the inside of the public school beast and understand better than any who is feeding this beast, and are responding with a loud voice, not my child, not on my watch. Moms for America Senior Director Mrs. King told Fox News Digital. Quote, U.S. State School Board Association are seeing the reactions of parents in many ways from speaking up at school board meetings to getting their children out of these classrooms, and state school boards know they do not want more problems with parents across America. The NSBA's infamous letter to the Justice Department in September 2021 asked for parents protesting the school board meetings to be federally looked into, saying school officials were facing threats and violence at meetings. The letter requested that actions should be examined under the Patriot Act as domestic terrorism. The NSBA letter later apologized for the letter's language. A recent independent review found that the NSBA letter was even more extreme in draft form, calling for the deployment of the Army National Guard and the military police to monitor school board meetings. Actions by the NSBA's leadership last fall needlessly harmed school board relationships and inflamed partisan tensions. The WASB said in a statement issued to its members, those actions caused more than half of the state board organizations across the nation to distance themselves from the NSBA or drop membership entirely. How does the NSBA still continue to operate if they only have a few states left as members? This comes from Monster Liberty account tweeted from the news of Nebraska's exit. The question was on the mind of many education activists. I call on the school board to join other Alaska school boards to cut ties with the NSBA, thus adding to the over 25 states who have withdrawn from NSBA. This is a great step to eventually removing the Department of Education and regaining our 10th Amendment rights. Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience that would like to comment on non-agenda items, please come to the front and state your name. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent and School Board. This is a concern that is on the agenda but not itemized on the agenda. It has to do with the schedule.
If it is this in regards to the calendar?
It's on the calendar as a sub memo to what you guys will be discussing tonight.
Right, which would make it an agenda item. And so if you could, do you have any other comments that are non-agenda items?
I have 6 or so, but they're back there for the different times when I can come forward. So, being it wasn't itemized, I wasn't sure. Do you want me to come back at a different time?
If you could, if it's related to an agenda item.
I can.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
And ma'am, there's only one more time to comment on agenda items. So all 6 of your other comments, you want to bring those with you.
Thank you, Ben. Any other comments on non-agenda items? One more time. Any other comments on non-agenda items?
I have to look at them all, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry for that. I thought I had them straight. I had them numbered 7A, 4A, all that kind of fun stuff. Good evening, Superintendent and Board. My name is Virgie Thompson. I'm a 30-year school district employee. As a non-agenda item, see, I knew that because it's written on here. I would like to talk to you about training specifically for drugs with our staff. This is a big issue in the state, the cities, and schools. Our staff should receive specialized training to recognize, detect, and observe what our students are using and what it looks like. Vaping is very popular, and the devices resemble ink pens, markers, cell phones, and lip gloss cases. I'm not saying I know it all, but I have seen a lot. But I see way more than I should in a school environment. One of the board's goals is to promote safe and healthy environment for all. I can honestly say I do not feel safe, and the school climate is not healthy. I see students tell teachers to, they use obscene language to teachers. They're taken out of class, sometimes escorted. They go to their next class. They do the same thing over and over and over. And what this does is disrupt educational time. This last school year, my granddaughter, the school where she attends, I take her to school and I bring her home. She has no contact outside of school. She almost overdosed. Took her to the doctor for a UA, and she had ecstasy in her system. One of her friends at school gave her something for a headache, and it could have killed her because it could have been laced with fentanyl. It takes a very minimal amount to kill someone. District-wide, instead of schools choosing discipline that might be better served for those who enforce poor behavior, we need to come across the whole schools, all the schools in the district, to come up with a policy that we're going to be able to follow through with, and we should with unity. We should be trained to use Narcan. We as staff should have Narcan. The last thing I want to do is walk in the restroom at school and a girl be laid out on the floor and I can't help her. And my nurse is on the other side of the building. We don't know what these students do in the bathroom between classes. A student could come in the classroom and 3 minutes later be laying on the floor. We have no control of that, but what we do have control of is to give them something to possibly save their lives. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience with non-agenda item comments? One more time, anybody in the audience? Persons to be heard, please.
Hi, my name is Cindy Hudgens, and I'd like to read a message that was sent to me by a teacher that wants to remain anonymous because being afraid for her job. I hope you don't mind, but I want to bring something up. But I don't want to lose my job. I thought maybe someone should know that CRT is being taught under the guise of cultural responsive training here at MatSu Borough School District. Mandy Smoker, and I'm not sure of the last part, Bradis is teaching it. This individual was brought in from Montana.
Make sure your comments don't have to do with individuals as was read in the rules.
Oh, I can't put any names.
No.
Sorry.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm sorry. Also, at the beginning of our meeting, we are reading an acknowledgement to the natives regarding their land. I can't post because I work at MatSu Borough School District. I'm concerned about critical race theory. It is something that is pushing racism, not helping with racism. And I was told about a year ago or so, maybe less, that we really didn't have to worry about that in our school district, but we do. I don't know if the board is aware of what's going on. I also talked to a parent, it was probably about 6 or 8 months ago, that had a child in first grade, and he did not like some of the schoolwork that his child was bringing home. He called the school, questioned them, and they said, oh, it's this class, 45 minutes a week, and if you don't like your child being in it, you can come over here and have them taken out of it. So that's what he did. But he was very concerned about this class. It was social, emotional learning. I just thought maybe the school board should be aware of this if they're not, because I know there's a lot of parents out there that are concerned about it. Thank you.
Anyone else on non-agenda items? So this non-agenda items, as was read in the rules, is limited to 3 minutes per person per meeting. So anybody with non-agenda items that hasn't already spoken? All right, seeing and hearing none, we're going to move to agenda item 4, Borough, City, State, and Tribal Reports. Dr. Trainor, do we have any Borough, City, State, or Tribal reports?
No.
With that, we will go to consent agenda. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda? Member Burke?
Mr. President, I'd like to move to bring item B, request for grant acceptance to MatSu Health Foundation off the consent agenda so we can have discussion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Right. Purpose of discussion, any discussion? Member Berge, somebody put the motion.
Well, the purpose of the discussion is, you know, as I read through the grant to provide licensed therapists within the schools from outside agencies, a couple things came to mind that it said that they're going to discuss with faculty, and I'm concerned whether HEPA comes into place if these are licensed practitioners. I also look at, you know, our school nurses are barely allowed to give out aspirin without parental consent in the buildings, yet we have a licensed therapist coming in to perform mental health services. It hasn't been identified in the grant whether these are services identified in an individual education plan and our educational necessity, or if this is a medical procedure that's being done within our buildings outside of an IEP or some other formal educational document. So I would like some more information.
Okay, Member Berge, so just to make sure we understand what we'll be voting on, we are pulling out, the proposed motion on the table is to pull from the consent agenda the request for grant acceptance, MatSu Health Foundation, and to add that to action item H. Would that be accurate?
We could do that, or we could see if Dr. Trainee could provide us a report on this later and then move it back into the consent agenda. I want to be able to talk to this because I'm concerned that we have medical practitioners operating in the building, and I want to be assured that what they are doing falls within the parameters of an IEP or another educational protocol that's functioning within the district.
So because it needs to be voted on, and we will go ahead and if you're okay as a maker of the motion to put it under action item as added to action item H.
That's fine.
Okay, so with that, any more discussion before taking a vote? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Member Berge?
Yes.
Member Brabasco?
Yes.
Member Hart?
Yes.
Member Underwood?
Yes.
Member Taylor?
Yes.
Member Larson?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. So agenda item 6B, request for grant acceptance, MatSu Health Foundation has now moved to action item H. Therefore, we still have minutes from June 1st, 2022. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with that list?
I move to approve consent agenda, action item A, minutes, June 1, 2022.
Second.
Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, we have approved the consent agenda, minutes of June 1st, 2022. We will now move to public comment on action items and non-action items. The same rules that were previously read apply to this section of action items, non-action item public comment. And with that, we will go ahead and we will proceed with the action item and non-action items list. Those who have signed up with public comment, we will make it through this list, and then, time permitting, we will open that up for further and additional comments. Member Brabasco, will you begin us?
Yes, Mr. President. Casey Elliott.
Hi, my name is Casey Elliott, and I am going to be, this is going to be about the proposed changes to the extracurricular and curricular activities. So should I do that at another time? I think now's the time. Okay. All right. So just really quickly, you're going to hear a lot tonight about rights, and you're going to hear about what's right. And I just wanted to talk to you a bit about risk. This policy, that as it's reading in its second reading and revision, it's not just poor policy that opens the district. It's not just poor policy, it opens the district up to risk. It's your duty as a school board to be good stewards of public funds. And if you want to open the district up to bleed money fighting lawsuits, this policy is how you bleed money fighting lawsuits. Firstly, there's at least 10 states which allow something other than male or female on a birth certificate. What will the district do when a child with such a birth certificate comes to Alaska and wants to participate in sports? Have you thought about that? When schools must deny these students the ability to participate on any team because of the way you've written this policy, whether or not they are trans or not, you put the district at risk for another lawsuit. And when the student is denied a team which they feel most comfortable because of the way this policy is written, the district will have shared protected information with their classmates and even the general public, and that is another violation of federal law, and yes, another lawsuit. And when you deny students the ability to use a locker room with which they feel the most comfortable, that is also a violation of federal law, and yes, another lawsuit. Respectfully, this policy, you're in over your heads and you're out of your lane. It is not a policy, it takes much more thought of this, but putting it into it. But the best thing about this is that we live in an area where 1 in 10 of people don't have a high school diploma. What are you doing about those things? This is not even a solution looking for a problem. It is a problem looking for a bigger problem. And at the end of the day, it's bad policy, and you should just get rid of it. It's not helping anyone. It's not doing anything. It's not helping our students. It's not protecting anything. It's just plain discrimination. It will lose in court. Laws like these and policies like these are losing every single day in court as we speak across the country. So just forget about it. Just put it aside. Let's do something else that actually helps our kids. Thank you.
Stated at the beginning, as in regards to ensuring that there's no reactions within, to ensure the decorum of the meeting proceeds. If you could just please keep your applause or comments or anything else to yourself. Not the comments coming from here, but just from the audience. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Member Probasco, please.
Alex Elliott Squires.
Yes, Elliot. Sorry about that. Alrighty. Begin when I start speaking?
Yes, please state your name for the record. Thank you.
My name is Alex. I will be a senior this year in the MatSu School District. I've attended schools in the Valley since junior high, and I wanted to spend and share with you some of my thoughts about the transport bill as a current student. Frankly, I am incredibly annoyed. When my school lacks money to buy necessary equipment and materials for science lab or to hire enough full-time staff, I'm annoyed that you've decided it is more important to make policies about a completely non-issue. I am annoyed that I go to school where I cannot learn skills like photography, videography, graphic designs, trades that pay well and are in high demand because the computers at my school are too old and cannot handle the programs. But obviously, you think that deciding who goes on what sports team is a more critical issue than making sure students have the best education possible. I am incredibly frustrated after 2 years of the pandemic in which many students in the Valley fell behind, and many of us are still depressed and anxious and working hard not to drop out. The school chooses to focus on this. But most of all, I'm disappointed in you. We have many problems in our school right now. Bullying, drugs, mental health problems, staff shortages, students not getting quality education. I see it every day. And many more problems. The school decides that it wants to promote sex equality, that this cannot be done by discriminating against transgender athletes. To say that transgender athletes take away from opportunities for women is just factually incorrect, and it's just a way to discriminate against trans students. Trans athletes deserve to have access to the same resources as other students in a way that they can be comfortable and safe in their environment. Despite this, even by proposing this policy that you're telling us students that you think it's more important to police the genitalia of children, and the school board is so out of touch with what's going on with our schools. I see my peers struggling mentally. I am watching my friends and my friends decide that they'd rather be dead than live another day. And I've seen almost nothing being done about it. Please address the actual problems going on in the MatSu School District, not made up ones like this. Thank you for listening.
Sarah Turda.
Hi, my name is Sarah Murtada. I live in Palmer. I want to start first by just talking about myself personally. And I'm speaking here today against Bill 6145. I've been an athlete since I was 3, primarily swimmer, but I've done some other sports. I played growing up, I played through high school, played college, and I still play now recreationally. I've learned teamwork, I've learned to be a better citizen of my community, and I've learned about physical and mental strength. And I'm really proud to have been part of an inclusive team during my time as an athlete. I played with LGBTQ students and I played against LGBTQ students, and I'm proud of every single race that I won, and I learned from every single race that I lost. And I know that those victories would not have been as sweet if my classmates were not part of my team. Those losses wouldn't have been valuable if I'd known that people were not being allowed to play on those teams against me because something like LGBTQ status. I also want to talk about the necessity of this bill. The media wants to be popular, they want to get attention, and so we hear a lot about trans students playing in sports. But the media isn't always accurate. It's a lot easier to mention cases where trans students might be winning a race, might be winning something. It's a lot less fun to talk about, oh, they lost 300 games before that. Oh, they were in the pool every single day, practicing and practicing. That's not what we hear. We just hear trans student wins, and that's what gets popular. But you never hear about those 300 losses before the win, and I think it's important to look at the whole picture. And when we look at the data, when we look at when people are winning and when we're losing, we see that a lot of the time, trans students are winning, but they're also losing, just like every other athlete, just like me. I'm really proud to have been part of inclusive teams growing up. I'm really proud to be an athlete, and I know that I would not have graduated from college and I wouldn't have graduated from law school if it weren't for the skills I learned as an athlete. So please, I urge you to make sure that every single child can participate in these sports, and I urge you to not pass Bill 6145. Thank you for your time.
Crystal Howard.
President Ponder, members of the school board, I want to thank you for letting me speak today. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone a little bit about the commitments of the board. I believe that all students, MatSu Borough School District prepares all students for success. We believe that the needs and best interest of students drive all decisions. Biology rejects that sex is binary. That means whatever line you draw between men and women is going to be arbitrary. There is nothing in this policy that is supported by truth or any element of science. You're not legislating sports participation based on the size of your shoe or height or any other immutable characteristics. It's also clear that elite sports have always been about unfair advantages. Usain Bolt's long legs, Michael Phelps' out-of-proportion wingspan, or Sir Bradley Wiggins' cardiovascular system. Sports are inherently not fair. Not only does this proposal discriminate against trans youth in ways that compromise their health, social, and emotional development and safety, it also raises privacy concerns. Trans women and girls have been competing in sports at all levels around the world. Despite the hundreds of, if not thousands of trans women competing, only a handful have had any success at the high school and collegiate level. And women's sports have continued to grow and thrive in states with policies that allow trans students and athletes to compete. The idea of the feminine needing to be protected is a falsehood, and it is in opposition to the strenuous task of playing sports. Trans youth have become a vehicle for showcasing one's conservatism. This is exponentially clear when you consider that this proposal contradicts the advice of every major medical, psychiatric, and pediatric major medical organization in the United States. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia, held under Title VII, a federal law that prohibits sex discrimination in employment. Discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity is a form of sexual discrimination and therefore prohibited. While Title VII focuses on employment and Title IX on education, Courts routinely look to definitions of sex discrimination under Title VII to inform interpretations of discrimination under Title IX. In fact, several courts have already applied the reasoning in cases involving Title IX claims. The policy you are proposing is in direct defiance. I ask that you strive to be inclusive and set the example that every child matters, even the ones that you don't understand. I have a policy letter explaining how the schools are required to treat transgender students under Title IX. Got that, everybody? That's okay?
You can also hand them over here and we can distribute them that way as well.
I'm almost through.
Are you done? I don't want to eat it your time.
Birch Eucness.
Good evening. My name is Birch Eucness, Palmer High class of 1989. I'm here representing myself. I'm not happy. I'd rather be at my daughter's soccer game right now than be here talking to you. The current school district administration's lack of professionalism is disturbing. They are sending out letters to local businesses about a policy they are wanting to implement when that policy has not been approved by the school board or the Commissioner of Education. This lack of professionalism does not reflect well on the school board and is not a pattern I want my daughter taught. PLC, Professional Learning Communities. You want to take an hour of educating my child away a week. Didn't we lose enough instruction hours with COVID? Test scores were not on an upward trend even before COVID. Maybe work on educating my child rather than taking an hour a week away for a feel-good program for teachers. No public process on developing this program was used. Your own agenda from the June 1st meeting states that the program was developed by the administration. Is this administration afraid to involve the public or teachers in developing a PLC program? Will there be any metrics in place to judge how effective this PLC would be if passed, or when to terminate it? One of the biggest issues brought up as to why PLCs fail is proper implementation. Obviously, if this revised calendar is passed and approved, implementation is already in question. A good solution, if you must have PLCs, would be have them an hour before students show up at the regular time. But this would have to be voted on and approved by the teachers, and the administration would not have the time to do this before the next school year since they tried to sneak this in right now. If PLCs are implemented, the school year will have to be extended. I am not in favor of a longer school year. I want a more efficient school year. This calendar request has to be approved by the Commissioner of Education. If passed here, I will fight to have the Commissioner not approve it until an open and transparent discussion about PLCs occurs. Also, a letter and emails from the school district has been circulated stating that this policy has already been approved. Yet to my knowledge, this new calendar policy has not been voted on and adopted officially. The district's webpage was updated stating that this policy is in place, yet it hasn't been voted on or approved. Why does this administration continually try to slide things by after the school year is over and parents are preoccupied with their summer activities? A change like this should have been discussed before the end of the school year. A calendar was already approved in March. So in closing, this administration has already put out documents that this revised calendar has been adopted when there are at least 2 more steps that need to be taken to approve this revised calendar for this year. This administration developed a PLC program without a clear and transparent process for the public or teachers to have their input. Please do not adopt this revised calendar. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I will be leaving to go watch my daughter play soccer right now.
Econ Farley.
Mr. Chair and members of the school board, my name is Declan Farley, and I use he, him pronouns. I graduated in 2021 from Palmer High School and was a student in this district from kindergarten to graduation. I stand here today to give you a perspective you may not have heard in regards to the attempted ban of transgender athletes within the district. Many of you attempting to ban transgender students from doing the things that they love have never spoken to a transgender athlete, so that is why I stand here today. I am a product of this district, and I am a transgender athlete. I have known I was transgender since I was 16, however, I did not come out until after I left this school district due to fear for my safety. I came out during high school as bisexual and had eggs thrown at my car at Palmer High. This district is not a safe place for the queer community. These bans you want to put in place only accentuate my reasonings for staying in the closet as long as I did. As you may know, suicide is far too common in our state and in our district. Suicide rates are much higher within the queer community and for people under the transgender umbrella. Excluding these students from the joy of the things that they love most, such as sports, puts them at a higher risk of suicide. I cannot change the way that I was born, but you can all change the way that you treat those different around you. Transgender people such as myself want to be treated with the same respect as everyone else. One of the goals listed under the school board page is to promote safe and healthy environments for all. How is excluding transgender people promoting a safe and healthy environment? How is promoting hate and ignorance within our district making a safe and healthy environment? By introducing this proposition, you are telling every student, transgender and not, that you do not care about them. When will this change? Today, I will leave you with a quote from Dr. Dana Adkins, a board-certified endocrinologist at Duke University. When a school or athletic organization denies transgender students the ability to participate equally in athletics because they are transgender, that condones, reinforces, and affirms the transgender students' social status as outsiders or misfits who deserve the hostility they experience from peers. I hope you will think about my story and the pain that this district has caused me when you make decisions about the way transgender people are allowed to express themselves. I made it out of this district alive, but many others won't if this passes.
Sarah Ellis.
My name is Sarah Ellis. My pronouns are she, her, and I am cisgender female. I'm here tonight to ask you not to pass the ordinance that bans transgender youth from girls' sports. The mission of the MatSu School District is we prepare all students for success. How can you do this when you are wanting to ban transgender youth from girls' sports? There is currently no scientific evidence that transgender people have an athletic advantage. Transgender athletes have been eligible for Olympic, professional, and NCAA competition for years without any instance of trans dominance in sports. It turns out that when transgender girls play on girls sports teams, cisgender girls can win. In fact, the vast majority of female athletes are cisgender, as are the vast majority of winners. There is no epidemic of transgender girls dominating female sports. Attempts to force transgender girls to play on the boys' teams are unethical attacks on transgender children. It's unscientific, and they would cause serious mental health damage to both cisgender and transgender youth. Please remember the mission statement of the MatSu School District. We prepare all students for success. Thank you.
Juliana Schmidt. She's on the phone. Juliana Smith.
Hi, my name is Juliana Smith. I live in Lockwood. I grew up in the Valley as an LGBT young adult, and I have continued to be pretty actively involved in the Valley's LGBT community through volunteering and identity for the last 5 years. In college, we strongly opposed Bill 6145 because all youth, regardless of gender identity, should have the same opportunities to participate in sports in their school life. I firsthand have witnessed transgender youth struggle to find community and acceptance or even tolerance in Alaska. And school is supposed to be a neutral and accepting place. Sometimes it's the only place where kids feel safe to be themselves. Separating transgender youth from their peers and sports only serves to further isolate them from their community. By preventing transgender youth from participating in a team that aligns with their gender identity, the MSDSD is effectively othering transgender kids from their peers and setting an example of exclusion and rejection that are sure to follow. To any trans or non-binary people listening, I want you in my community. I will fight for you to have space in this community. I am asking the school board to oppose Bill 6145 to protect trans kids and show LGBT kids that they are welcome in Alaska communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Levitt.
Chairman and members of the board. My name is Rachel Levitt, and I'm speaking this evening regarding the proposal to ban transgender student athletes from participating in sports aligned with their gender. Many elected officials have recently made statements regarding bans on transgender student athletes. One such statement was made by Governor Spencer Cox of Utah when he vetoed his state's proposed ban. On March 22nd, he stated, "I must admit, I am not an expert on transgenderism. I struggle to understand so much of it, and the science is conflicting. When in doubt, however, I always try to err on the side of kindness, mercy, and compassion. I also try to get proximate, and I am learning so much from our transgender community. They are great kids who face enormous struggles. Here are the numbers that have most impacted my decisions: 75,000, 4, 1, 86, and 56. 75,000 high school kids participating in high school sports in Utah. 4 transgender kids playing high school sports in Utah. 1 transgender student playing girls' sports. 86% of trans youth reporting suicidality. 56% of trans youth having attempted suicide. 4 kids and only 1 of them playing girls' sports. That's what all of this is about. 4 kids who aren't dominating or winning trophies or taking scholarships. 4 kids who are just trying to find some friends and feel like they are part of something. 4 kids trying to get through each day. Rarely has so much fear and anger being directed at so few. I don't understand what they are going through or why they feel the way they do, but I want them to live. And all the research shows that even a little acceptance and connection can reduce suicidality significantly. The MatSu School District Administration has stated that it knows of no transgender female student athlete now or in the history of the district. So if this ban isn't going to affect any actual student athletes, what will it do? It will create an atmosphere of fear and give license to others to treat our most vulnerable students with cruelty. And I can tell you, there's already plenty of cruelty towards our transgender youth. I am the mother of a transgender child who graduated from a high school in this school district. In their junior year, my child was attacked by 4 male teens after school. I learned of this attack within 30 minutes because one of the boys had videoed part of it and posted it on his social media account. The boy started the attack by using a homophobic slur. The video shows one of the boys punching my child in the face and head again and again and again. Ultimately, my child did not participate in the prosecution of these boys. They did not feel safe working with the adults in this community for protection, partly because the local police chief had once made an anti-transgender statement on his social media account. So please understand, when the officials in this community turn their backs on transgender youth, these incredibly vulnerable children are left with no one in authority to trust. Thank you.
Rachel Levitt. Jenny Illis.
Foyer.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Jenny Foyer, my pronouns are she, her, and I am a cisgender female. I would first like to acknowledge the denial of people for the use of their land. I am a proud parent of students in the school district, and I'm also an educator. This marks my 20th year in the classroom, 18 of which have been with MSBSD. I'm here tonight to speak on the policy change for youth sports. The proposed change is discriminatory and will have dire consequences for both the school district and transgender youth who attend our schools. First, this change is in direct violation of Title IX and HR 5. Title IX specifically prohibits sex-based discrimination, and HR 5 prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Trans youth have a right to every opportunity that a cisgender youth has access to, whether it's sports or education. So unless you want to open up our district to lawsuits that directly involve human rights violations, I would reconsider this change. Title IX and HR 5 provide funding to our district to ensure equality and equal rights for everyone. The board has already stated that the district doesn't have the money to adequately fund teacher salaries by not offering educators a fair contract. How are you going to support athletic programs without funding from the government if they find out the district is in direct violation of both Title IX and HR 5? Where are you all going to pull the funds if the lawsuit is brought against our district? Second, by outing and segregating trans youth to a co-ed team, you are potentially putting those youth at risk of being kicked out of their homes or bullied. Not all trans youth are out to their classmates, let alone to their parents. How are you going to find out if a youth is trans? Their private parts are exactly that, private, none of your business. Did you know that over 40% of houseless youth are LGBTQ+? And the average age queer youth become houseless is 14 or 15. As an educator, I have seen the repercussions of staff that was ill prepared to deal with queer issues such as this one. I have both comforted students who have been humiliated by staff who didn't know how to handle trans issues, and have comforted students who have been outed to their parents before they were ready. I have even housed youth that have been kicked out of their homes because of their gender identity. I know families with LGBTQ youth that have left our district because they did not feel safe, and they even left our state. My request is simple. Educate yourself and your staff about LGBTQ issues. Learn how to create a positive and affirming spaces for all to feel welcome. I'm going to shorten this up really quick. Finally, our district mission statement states, we will prepare all students for success. If we are denying equitable access for trans youth to school sports, we are isolating an already marginalized group of people. Thank you for your time.
Vincent?
Foyer. Good evening. I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak. My name is Vincent Foyer. I'm a parent of 2 teenage girls here in the school district. I'm also a business owner, president of a small nonprofit organization called the Queen's Guard, and obviously a community member. BP 6145 sets a discriminatory precedent. It's an attempt to instigate the erasure of trans youth by creation of a legally designated category of other. This attempt is couched in language of concern based on a false narrative and designed to ignite the fears of the people in this community. This will harm children, something that this board is not supposed to be about, something this school district is not supposed to be about. It makes trans youth others while teaching cisgender youth to avoid those who are other. We're supposed to be about inclusion, not hate and not division. These types of rules are in direct contradiction to the guidelines put forward by the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychiatric Association, as well as the American Medical Association, who stated in 2021 that trans and non-binary gender identities are normal variations of human identity and expression. Normal. Not other. A part of transitioning is social transitioning, which means getting to live as themselves and be authentic. Young people, transgender and cisgender, should have their dignity respected. This change takes away that dignity. It takes away that respect from them. And just because they're kids, quote unquote, doesn't mean they don't deserve it. While discussing youth in sports, it's important to remember that in pre-adolescent children, there are not significant differences between the sexes. Up until the time we're talking about puberty, there is not this variation that everyone is crying out and worried about. And even after puberty, if this is a trans youth who has been undergoing transition under a medical doctor's care, it's not there. There's a lot of comments and a lot of fear about the trans community. You hear a lot of out-and-out lies sometimes. I'm here to tell you that as a transgender man, who transitioned after having been a female athlete in my youth. Your fears are unfounded. Thank you.
Tanya Davis. Tanya Davis. Carrie Anderson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the school board. My name is Carrie Anderson, and I'm here to applaud you for bringing up BP 6145 in regards to extracurricular and co-curricular activities. I applaud you for bringing that forward, and I show my emphatic support for it. I'm stepping away from my daughter's basketball game right now to be here with you tonight because I think it's that important. Down the road at Grizzly Fitness and the Colony Schools, there are 37 high school girls basketball teams who have gathered from all over Alaska to enjoy a team camp and to enjoy the blessings that Title IX has created for them 50 years ago. I'm hearing a lot of discussion about Title IX, but it absolutely enabled the creation of girls' sports programs. As a former female athlete myself, I've also raised 5 daughters who have all been highly involved in sports their entire lives. I've also coached girls' sports for 15 plus years. Sports are such a blessing in the lives of girls. We must protect these opportunities for girls by not allowing male-bodied athletes and the physical advantage that they do have to ever take their place. I've always been proud and grateful that my girls have had sports so readily available to them. Thanks to the pioneers of the Title IX movement, they have had the right to play in female sports programs and compete at a level playing field. If biological males enter female sports with their clear physical advantages, they will take the place of deserving girls on team selections, winners' podiums, awards, alternate teams, records, and the list goes on. I have heard that this is not an issue here in Alaska, and I'm here to tell you today that it absolutely is. A few years ago, I was at the state track meet in Anchorage where I witnessed one of my former athletes, run a race, and she was the girl who missed the spot on the podium by 1 place. The person who crossed the line in front of her was a male-bodied athlete from Sitka. Just this year, I watched a male-bodied athlete dominate a position, a very highly coveted position on the soccer field in a girls' varsity soccer game, as they used their great advantage over the female athletes on the field, and it affected the overall game to their favor. The idea of allowing transgender athletes in girls' sports is being sold as inclusion. It's actually exclusion for girls, excluding the next girl on the bench, excluding the next place winner in a competition, excluding the next girl for a scholarship, excluding the girl in line for an opportunity for advancement, excluding the next girl's voice in a leadership role, excluding an entire group of girls who are uncomfortable with travel accommodations or locker room situations. Please do not allow even one girl to experience exclusion on her playing field that a male-bodied athlete and let a male-bodied athlete take her spot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Page. It's on the phone. Linda Page. Chammy Kruger.
I have my son with me as well because he's going to testify right after, and I'm here for moral support. Hello again, Mr. Chair, members of this board. I emailed you last time this was up for discussion. My name is Cammie. My pronouns are she, her. I live on the Nina and Atna land. I vote, and I'm a mother of a student here at the MatSu School District. I come before you today terrified. As a queer woman and mother to a transgender youth in this district, I know firsthand the vile comments and threats that this community loves to throw. By coming here, I'm outing myself publicly as a queer human in this space, and I'm putting myself at risk. Claiming, as you do, that this ignorant policy will protect women in sports is not only laughable, it's unconstitutional. The state has the same language in Senate Bill 140, and it died on the floor due to the risk of litigation enacting such a bill would invite. What makes you, the school board, think you are above the Constitution of the state of Alaska? Is it your hatred or your ignorance? I come to you today already knowing you will likely pass this unconstitutional policy. I am here more to make it known to every queer youth out there that your elders will continue fighting against such dehumanization than to convince you to see us as human beings. We have always existed. We will continue to exist, and we will no longer be silent. I will repeat. By passing this policy, you are inviting litigation, which I will pursue. Excluding my student from sports because of your ignorance is violating his constitutional right to privacy, and as the Alaska Supreme Court further ruled in Breeze versus Smith in 1972, at the core of this concept of liberty is the notion of total personal immunity from governmental control, the right to be let alone. Pass this policy, and I will sue you. Thank you, and happy Pride.
Is this Fern?
Fern.
Okay. Fern, please.
My name is Bird News, and my pronouns are he, they, it. I wrote this and made the choice to testify on my own. As a transgender student at Colony Middle School, it has been hard, being bullied every day since 6th grade. Bill 6145 won't have me because I would be excluded from activities that other students are able to do. Why do you hate transgender people? What about it scares you? What about us scares you? We just want to be kids and live our best lives. Let transgender kids play sports. Thank you and happy Pride.
Robin Moffett.
Hello again, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry? And the members of the school board.
What was that? Say it out loud. Say it in my face.
No,
he's not being respectful. No, you need some respect. No. He just accused me of child abuse, and I want that known.
Let's step outside, please.
Sir, you're a video.
Crisis actors?
Right, please reset the clock. So we need to do that.
Are we, like, is that, I know that we have rules, so I'm not sure if it's okay.
You're totally fine, you can go
No,
ahead.
I know, but like, the name calling and stuff that's happening right now, like, how is that being allowed if we have rules? We can't clap, but they can call names.
Let's ensure that the reform is continuing to be met, that we don't have any name calling, we don't have any clapping, and we keep the utmost dignity for everybody that's here. We really appreciate the public comment, and we would like to continue the public comment and not have to terminate public comment early. And so please, let's ensure that we maintain the more
So
professionalism.
before I start,
Thank you.
like, a lot of us are taking a lot of risk to even be here in person, and so to have hateful and harmful comments being said without them being removed is a big problem. So are we going to, can you assure me that our safety is going to be paramount, and you're going to remove people from the audience that are being harmful, rather than just shutting down public comment?
Cannot hear her.
remarks at all?
What we need to do, noted, thank you, and if you can just go ahead with your comments, and then we will ensure that the staff and everybody else here is well.
Safe.
Yes.
Thank you. Hello again, Mr. Chair and members of the school board. You know, my name is Robin Moffett, my pronouns are she, her. I am queer, and we are resting our feet on Denina and Otna land. To start off, and addressing Ms. Underwood directly, I would like to first list off the names of trans athletes who have been awarded athletic scholarships or preferred placements in Alaska over their classmates. As you can tell, it has been 0. Now I want to list off, I need to change that, I'm sorry. I had to change my phrasing because it wasn't saved here. Now I would like to list off the names of some trans humans who have been murdered in our country in 2022 alone. But I don't know if those names, those actual human lives, will make any impact on you. You have proven time and again that your personal biases and political and religious misconceptions are what is guiding you, not the very rules of the school board, and certainly not the lives of the youth in your care. As you see, there is no war on women in sports, but there is a war on trans humans. There is a war on youth in the school district who don't fit your exclusionary mold. The youth you are targeting are already in danger, and you are continuing to tell them and their families that they aren't safe here. You are putting youth at risk for your personal political gain. I'm disgusted, I am disappointed, I am emboldened. Stripping students in this community of their constitutional right to non-discriminatory policies in their schools and stripping parents of their freedom to choose whether or not their youth can or will participate in sport in the school district will have lasting and legal consequences in the future. I want to remind you, I have 4 children that are or will be attending this school district, and I could gladly and proudly transfer them. But I'm here to stay and I'm here to fight. I want to leave you with this. If this passes, I will respond with the fullest extent of civil law the state has to offer to do what should be your job, protecting the youth of this school district and keeping youth in our community safe from prejudice or harm. Thank you. Happy Pride.
Amber Rhodes. She's online. Amber. Amber Rose.
Amber, if you are online, can you push *6?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Amber Rose. When considering how you will vote in regards to Bill 6145, I would like for you to consider how little impact this bill would have on maintaining fairness for women and girls in high school sports, and contrast that with the hugely negative and discriminatory impact this would have on transgender teens. This bill discriminates against transgender girls specifically in that they are the only students who would be forbidden to participate in their chosen sport with a pure signal to relate to. Transgender boys and cisgender girls could not be prevented from participating in either male or female designated sports. Transgender people make up less than 1% of the population, and the number of transgender people who wish to participate in school-sponsored athletics is an even smaller percentage. In April, the Association of Alaska School Boards sent a letter to the Senate Education Committee relating to Senate Bill 140, which is the bill that addresses issues at the state level. In this letter, the association stated, in Alaska, we have not been able to obtain any evidence of female sports being affected, much less dominated by transgender athletes. What this means is that there is no reason to prohibit transgender females from playing on teams that align with their gender identity. Please ask yourself, how many transgender girls have displaced with cisgender girls from participating, excelling, and having every opportunity cisgender girls deserve? There is no evidence of this occurring. If this bill passes, we are unreasonably discriminating against transgender girls who simply wishes to participate in the people she feels she belongs with. She would not be preventing any other girl from succeeding. She would simply succeed in her own right. Another important thing to consider is that requiring proof that a girl is a girl has the potential to violate any girl's right to privacy. The phrasing of this bill states that the biological sex listed on the participant's birth certificate may be relied on to establish the participant's biological sex, but does not make this a required method of verification. Further, the Alaska Constitution does not define biological sex. At the very least, this bill is insufficient in providing clear guidance on what constitutes a biological female, and it is discriminatory and unconstitutional. Thank you.
Mr. President, that concludes all the people that have called in and were signed up to speak.
Thank you, Member Brabasco. At this time, what we will do is we will want to take as much public comment as we can for all those who do want to speak. And therefore, if you'd like to make your way to the dais and be able to state your question.
Thank you. My name is Jackie Heine Goforth. I'm a published writer. I have hundreds of works out. I've been on best-selling lists throughout the world. I am in 8 languages, and I am a connoisseur of common sense. I want you to know that the male skeleton has more density than the female skeleton. The pelvic bones are smaller, and the pelvic opening is in a cup shape with a little prothesis hanging down. The female pelvis, on the other hand, is larger, and it has a wider opening to allow an infant to come out. The transgender community cannot adjust to that. I want you to know that when you are set and conceived, your gender is set. You cannot grow as a rose if you were planted from a sunflower seed. I want you to know that the skeleton, the skull of a male, happens to be squarish on the jaw, and it's squarish around the eye sockets. The female one has a more curved chin, and it also has rounder eye sockets. Now, the transgender community has figured out how to carve down the chin, but they haven't figured out how to carve down the eye sockets. In other words, the moment you are unconscious, you will be whatever you were at birth. It is a conscious thing. Transgender is a conscious thing. If we are in an accident right here, and a jet comes through, a fireball comes through this place and burns everybody in here, unrecognizable, if you actually manage to survive it, you will be in the hospital and you will be Jane Doe or John Doe. Because the first thing they do is a gender test. If you're down at the morgue, your toe tag will say Jane Doe or John Doe because the first thing they do is a gender test. Drugs are administered because of their physiology, because they go through the female body differently than they do the male body. If you are a male, you're a male. If you're XY, you're XY. If you're XX, you're a female. That is a scientific fact. Now, like I said, muscle mass and body fat. Science has long acknowledged the difference between muscle mass and body fat for men and women. In one of the older but very comprehensive studies published in 1985, issued in the Journal of Applied Physiology, researchers used magnetic resonance imaging to compare skeletal muscle mass and distribution in a sample of 468 men and women. They found significantly more muscle mass in the men. Also of note, the gender difference is greater in the upper body. Gender differences in fractures may be related to body size, bone size, geometry, and density. Ready? Gender differences in fractures may be related because your bone area and your bone measurement are measured in the spine and hip using a distal tibia. Okay? Males have a higher lean mass, 92%, compared with females, which is 79%. They're different. We always have been. To put a male in with females is a violation of the laws of biology. Bi is two. You do not see out in nature a male bull, a bull moose, mating a bull moose. Thank you.
My name is Chris Tyree, and I would like to talk about my daughter. When I was pregnant with her, I had a bunch of male hormones in my body. She had a bunch of male hormones in her body, I could tell. When she was born, she looked like a little boy. She was built with muscles and looked like a little boy. And her dad said that should have been my boy. She's very athletic. All of these are her medals from Jesse Arco Games. This is the ones from the Olympic Games in Los Angeles, California. My daughter the other day asked me about all of this, and she says, Mom, I'm so glad that you didn't push me either way. She said, and I'm glad I didn't have people around me trying to push me either way. When she was at Colony Middle School, a lot of girls hated her and made her life miserable because of her athleticism. The boys asked her all the time to play 3 and 3-on-1 with them. They didn't ask the other girls to do it because she was so athletic. If I had pushed her and done all this transgenderism, she would have probably been mentally ill now, because she's a beautiful girl and she loves being a woman. She loves knowing that the men look at her like a woman and they treat her like a woman. This transgender stuff, in my opinion, is mostly a fad. When you are young, you do things to make the older people look at you, and you want to make them be shocked. And this is what this is. And not only this too, but in my opinion, I think that some of this is being pushed by people like Soros and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, because they want all of us to be divided against each other. They don't want us to get along. And then these poor children are the ones that are the pawns in the game. And it's really sad. And personally, I'm beginning to wonder if all government workers are not intellectual prostitutes, because they want the money all the time to do what the government says. The federal government says, I'll give you the money to teach sex. If you don't want to teach sex, then you don't get the money. It's all blackmail. It's all BS. I don't know why everybody falls for that. And I think it's time that we realize she's right. Males and females are different. When you go have yourself checked and they do blood work, you are either a man or a woman. You're not whatever they say they are. And you should do what you want when you're an adult, but don't push this on to children. This is wrong. And I don't want a man that became a woman in the restroom with me. Men still have men hormones when they become a woman. I don't care what they say. They still have those hormones. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Mary Robinson, and I am representing myself. I am speaking against the adoption of Board Policy 6145. The IOC and the NCAA are elite sport organizations that welcome transgender athletes. And the assertion that transgender athletes have an advantage is based on speculation and inference that have not been borne out by science and evidence. In my opinion, Board Policy 6145 is a weapon that uses women's sports as a way to marginalize transgender youth, and a shocking and appalling example of cruelty that tries to shame and dehumanize trans youth. I believe that the adoption of Board Policy 6145 would choose cruelty over compassion. And again, this is not about women's rights. It's about hate, it's about fear, it's about ignorance, and I urge the board to reject Board Policy 6145.
My name is Mike Coons, and I'm speaking for myself, and my flag is red, white, and blue. I applaud this school board in standing for not just girls and young women who put a lot of effort to excel in their sport of choice, but for enforcing federal law that changed centuries of discrimination against so many talented girls and young women. Title IX was and it is as important as the Civil Rights Act. Without Title IX, we wouldn't have a women champion women's soccer team. Colleges wouldn't have sports scholarships for aspiring young women that may not have gotten a scholarship on academics because their family didn't qualify financially. We wouldn't have our own Alaskan Olympian in cross-country skiing and now swimming, much less other Olympians. I applaud member Julie Underwood for her willingness to create sports teams that are made up exclusively by cross-dressers so they can compete against like people. Doubt there are enough to put up any teams, but that's their issue. Jubilee is the only person in a position like this that has voiced and supported this idea. I have not seen anyone from the far left even entertain such an idea. However, those who believe in this lifestyle want a truly equal sports team opportunity, then this makes perfect sense. If colleges want to have such teams and sports scholarships, that's up to the colleges. This proposal, however, has one major flaw. Our school teams will be all girls, young women, or all boys, young men. Meets involving other MatSu school teams will be equal. Yet, if against a school that allows cross-dressers to be on girls' teams, that fairness is negated. I strongly suggest that no boys be allowed to compete against any of our girls, young women, period. If that means the school forfeiting, then so be it. The school with the male cross-dresser being the one forfeiting. I know I'll be attacked by the left, far left, and socialists as a homophobe. Fine, so be it. I stand for real equality, not fake, woke equity. I am a free man, and as a free man, I do not condone the so-called LGBT XYZ demands that I must accept their blatant, in-your-face actions, nor will I support that they have any additional rights over me or any other person. As to the so-called trans, even many gay organizations oppose that the trans are going against their efforts. Those efforts are adding to harming our boys and girls mentally and are on purpose trying to confuse them to further the breakdown of our social norms, much less our republic. I am for any actions like this effort that supports our rights, freedoms, and social norms of many centuries across many cultures and religions. Let us keep real equality while accepting that there are real differences between men and women that we've embraced since Adam and Eve.
Mr. Chair, real quick. So as far as the forum goes,
So,
why are we allowing name calling?
It doesn't, your safety is on the utmost, and if there's people that are expressing they're being respectful for the child age, youth age, then we do have Palmer PD here, so I want to ensure that everybody's safety is here, and thank you.
Okay, hello. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Cody Hawkins, and I was born and raised in Palmer, going on 35 years now. I'm a proud father of a 16-year-old daughter who also attends Palmer High School. Yesterday, I attended a Fiery Council meeting, which you could find at Radio Free Palmer's YouTube, to discuss graffiti in a small park next to my home. Afterwards, I was approached and informed on a subject that is infiltrating our schools from the more left-leaning states in the lower 48s. While I am a proponent of freedom, of course, I will always take action in what is taught in our schools and done to our children. You have obviously heard of this ideology, but this social contagion of our time needs to be kept away from our schools, state, and kids at all costs. The practitioners chemically castrate children as young as 12 with puberty blockers such as a drug named Lupron, and surgeries such as vaginoplasties and double mastectomies as young as 16. These are irreversible and reprehensible to do to a child with an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. This practice is also known as gender-affirming healthcare, otherwise known as transgenderism. This also seems to lead men competing in women's sports, all while stealing scholarships and trophies with an unbeatable physiological advantage, no matter the hormone treatment. We also look in places like Loudoun County, Texas, where a sexual assault occurred. By opening up bathrooms of the opposite gender to said individuals, there would be dire consequences for our daughters. Just as I implored City Council, I now implore our school board members to keep this ideology away from our culture, curriculum, and most of all, our children. If you would like to know more about this, I suggest watching Daily Wire's What is a Woman by Matt Walsh. Also, this is kind of off topic, with the amount of school shootings on the rise, I'm in favor of arming our law-abiding Second Amendment teachers with the necessary means to stop any threats as long as they are properly trained with regular follow-up courses and training of different scenarios. That is all for now. Thank you.
Is the clock going to restart?
When you begin your comments.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Witt. I'm a longtime Palmer resident. My children went through Palmer schools. I'm a retired district employee of 20 years. And I'm now a grandmother of a beautiful young girl who has just started school at one of the schools here in the Valley. And I would like to thank the board for bringing forth this fairness in sports bill. I think it's very important for our girls. It's disheartening to see what's happening in the country with girls just getting blown away by male-bodied athletes. And it really doesn't matter that people say, well, this isn't a problem in Alaska, because it has been an issue. And it will most likely be an issue again. And I'm just concerned. Sports are so important for everybody. They're important for boys, they're important for girls. It's such a wonderful thing for people. And I'm afraid if some of these trends continue, that there's not going to be sports for girls. And I really appreciate this board standing up for girls and women. So I just want to thank you and express my support. And that's all I have to say.
Good evening, my name is Amy Henry. I'm going to talk about the differences between human females and males, or why boys and girls should not be allowed to compete on opposite sex teams. People change their minds. We see this with our divorce rates. But there are some things that cannot be changed. The basic division between males and females in the human race is whether a person is XX or XY. XX being female, XY being male. All the nip and tuck or artificial hormones cannot change this. The percentage of intersex births, according to WebMD, was 18 in 14,200 births, or 1.3 per 1,000. This issue is not at bat today. What is if a male or a female should be allowed to compete against the genetically opposite sex. I'm not here to wonder why we are suffering such an odd confusion at this time. It surely isn't genetic, or we would have discussed this 25 years ago. My personal opinion about the whys are unimportant. As I said, people change their minds. Fads come and go, cultural norms change. For instance, slavery was once acceptable, human sacrifice was once acceptable, and women did not have the right to vote. But I will say, concerning this issue, the king has no clothes. But we are not talking feelings here, or even cultural norms. We are deciding if it is normal for girls or boys to be put in an intimate situation with the other sex, when that in other circumstances would be a chargeable offense. We don't get to expose our genitals to the public. Those that do are charged with a crime. We should just be as careful of exposing our boys to naked girls and our girls to naked boys. Why? Because we say that people should not have the nakedness of the opposite sex forced on them. In the basic science, the men and women are built differently. I will go ahead and remind you of some of the basics. Men have an Adam's apple, nipples instead of breasts, a faster metabolism, more body hair. Women have breasts and nipples and lactate, half the upper body strength of men and 2/3 the lower body strength of men, and a tendency to lighter skin. Men have penises and women vaginas. Life science. Organ sizes are different, the rate of burning calories is different, and differences in bony structures. Thought catalog. Women have more body fat, a lower center of gravity, less lung capacity, fewer blood cells, a smaller muscle mass, and with comparable sizes, only 80% of the strength as a male. Women have weaker hand strength, they're generally only 90% as fast as men. Women have shorter and smaller bones, allowing for greater mechanical strength than men. We have life. There are much more that can be said. Hard science, not feelings. Simply put, women are at a disadvantage when competing directly with men in physical activities. It is not fair to put them in the same event. It is morally wrong, and that isn't a feeling either. Aside from feelings, we must consider hard science, and the hard science says men and women do not have an even playing field. Thank you very much.
My name is Miles, I use he, they pronouns, and I do identify as male. I'm 19 and I graduated from Colony High School in 2021. I did not compete in gendered sports. I was in marching band. But I can tell you that marching band definitely is what kept me in school and other band classes. I nearly dropped out my sophomore year because I was really depressed and I kind of just felt really alone and I wasn't getting through my classes. And my band director actually is the one who helped me to get out of that. And I even almost dropped out my senior year. I had 2 half credits I needed for the entire year. And I actually dropped out in October, and I came back in January to get them done. And the one who encouraged me to do that again was my band director. So I could imagine if I were a transgender athlete, that if I didn't have the kind of connections that I had in band, then if I were a transgender athlete, sorry, I didn't write anything down. As a transgender athlete, they probably would have a similar connection to their coach or their teammates that I did to have, like to my classmates and my director. So I think it would be just kind of heartbreaking for you to take away those support systems for the people who need it most. And I would say it's definitely transgender and LGBTQ youth who need the support the most. I grew up religious. Both of my parents are religious. I did not know what being transgender was until I reached high school and actually met a transgender person for myself. I always felt wrong. I always felt like a boy. I always wanted to be a boy. It's just I didn't know it was an option. A few people have said that hormonally, if you go to the doctors, if they took my blood, they would say I was a female, but that is actually wrong. I'm on testosterone at the moment. I'm early on in transition. But if they took my blood right now, they would say that I'm a male. Of course, my bones, they would say I'm a female, but that's just because I was born with a short stature. There are plenty of women who are taller and stronger than other men. But I think that a lot of people have been getting the biology of transgender people wrong, and they've been getting their sources from places that actually do not have correct data. And I just implore you guys to do your own research and not listen to what other people here are saying. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Board President, board members, and superintendent. My name is Oran Johnson. I'm a resident of the MatSu. I have granddaughters who have gone through the MatSu school district, and I have great-granddaughters, I'm very proud to say. They're coming through the MatSu school district right now. You know, something that hasn't been mentioned, talk about rights. I understand there's somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 female athletes in the MatSu school district. I heard a statistic quoted earlier by someone, and I'm not verifying the accuracy of this statistic, but they said that only 1% of the U.S. population is LGBT, or whatever that means. I'm not real sure. But it seems like to me we're ignoring the rights of the 2,000 to 3,000 normal, active, young girls and young women in our school district. They have rights also. I'll be darned if I want my granddaughters to have to be subject to being in a locker room or competing against much stronger male-bodied athletes. It's not right. We need to talk about the rights of the majority. I understand, and we're not denying transgender, we're not denying with this board policy, and I do support it, by the way, we're not denying transgender athletes the ability to play sports. We're just making them play in the lane that they were born in. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, we live a life that has lots of exclusions. And there's reasons for those exclusions. And normally there's sound, logical, biological reasons for those exclusions. And I believe the same thing should apply to sports. I strongly applaud you for board policy 6145. And I think we need to remember the rights of the majority of our athletes also. So that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm Declan Warner. I'm a 16-year-old junior at Career Tech, and I just want to say I'm against this bill. I didn't really write a speech, so that's all. Thanks for your time.
Virgie Thompson, I'm a paraprofessional for the MatSu Rural School District. I have a concern with the late start on Mondays. Has there been a survey with parents and guardians and teachers to determine what heartache this could change or cause? Additional childcare costs, work schedules needing to be changed? The purpose of a PLC that could be scheduled during the school week, or once a week, or once a month, and having a good chair with good training to keep them on task instead of making it a visitation session. Also, at my school, we have students arriving at 6 a.m. This late start could increase the amount of students freely in the building. All employees have contracted student contact times. To expect custodians who are on a different contract than the rest of us to monitor extra students does not allow them to get their job done. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rose Walcott, and I am outing myself to speak to you guys today. The Valley can be a malicious environment for queer kids like myself, especially the school district. This issue presented today is not an issue. It's a manufactured issue used to spark outrage. The biological differences, just chromosomes, have variance in nature. There are biological women who are born with XXY, XXX, XY chromosomes even, and go through a typical female puberty, and may not even realize that until they are tested on their chromosomes. I have always prided myself on viewing both sides of an argument, of understanding the other side of a political argument, and in this case, I find myself confused on what is trying to be done here. This seems to me solely as an issue that is pushed to create a sense of otherness for trans people like myself. I don't know any trans people who are going into sports. I don't know any trans people who are dominating in sports. I myself am not even involved in sports. I would like to go through high school being left alone. That is what I want for myself. And I have noticed today a lot of statistics about the differences between men versus women. And I would like to note that that would not be trans women who are undergoing hormone replacement therapy, which would very much change those statistics. And I also would like to note the amount of young people coming up today to talk about their disapproval of this bill, and the lack of older people coming up here to talk about that. And I think that just goes to show that the people that this bill will actually affect disagree. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cindy Hudgens, and I just want to say that I'm on your side. I approve BP 6145. There is a lot of talk here about inclusion of the few, but what about the rights of all the women, all the females, all the girls? There is proof out there that men are stronger. I mean, that's biological, that men are stronger. And there's proof out there that men are dominating women's sports. And maybe that isn't so much an issue with elementary kids, or maybe, I don't even know, high school kids, but at some point it is an issue. And It's not fair. It's not right for females. Female sports will eventually just go by the wayside, and it'll be male and transgender sports. So I don't have a problem with transgenders. You can be whatever you want to be. It's your choice to be what you want to be. But, you know, if, like someone else said earlier today, your bone structure says what you are. And if your body is burnt beyond recognition, they will identify you as a male or female by your bone structure. You can say you want to be a unicorn too, that's fine. But there are two genders, male and female. And this isn't fair to females. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Taryn Tester, and I just want to thank you for hearing everybody on both sides of this issue. Right now, I support this bill. I have a daughter that competes in sports, and she's homeschooled. It used to be that homeschoolers couldn't participate in sports, but they can now. And they found ways to include them. And I just don't want to see the school board rush into something that's new, that we're still exploring, that we're still figuring out. I'd like us to take our time and find a way to be supportive and inclusive and loving and kind and protective of transgender, but not rushing into something. I'd like to protect women's sports because I see potential down the road for males that are not truly transgender to find an opportunity to get a scholarship that they might not have on a male body team that they could take from a female. And I would like protection from those people who use any law they can to get their own gains. I don't see any threat from transgenders, but from people that would try and use these laws to their advantage. So I'd like us to be cautious as we move forward and not jump into things and protect women's sports for right now and find ways to include transgenders so they can have community and protection. And girls can also have the same. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica Young. My pronouns are she, they, and I am begging you to not put forward this incredibly harmful policy. I work at one of the few queer-friendly businesses, openly queer-friendly businesses in this town. I have had children beg me not to use their real name in front of their parents, not to let their parents know that they identify as queer because they feel safe around me and not around their parents. Bills like this further harm already extraordinarily vulnerable children. Your job is supposed to be to protect children. And if you put forward this bigoted policy that is based on ignorance, then you are going against your stated purpose to protect and help children. I never want to have another child come in looking for a book to help them not kill themselves or to understand why people hate them. It is appalling. They are children. Please find it in your hearts to have compassion even if you do not understand. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bert Hufftelling. I'm just really curious, want to know, what is a woman? Matt Walsh came out with his documentary here, and it really does address the lunacy, there is no other way to express it, that is being on full display here today. There is no different than him being also one of America's world-class child authors in the book called Johnny the Walrus. And the descriptions that I've heard here today and the things that people have said that biology no longer matters. I'm really confused where science has lost its way. We once were a world, a nation, a country that actually taught science based upon the scientific method. We have established rules. the way things are to be determined, and if they are repeatable, then obviously that becomes science, irrefutable science. Unlike, say, the Big Bang Theory, we still don't know. It's just, as it's stated there, a theory. So is whether or not a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man. That is 100% a theory. Most people would say that if I right now claim that I do not see myself as a person that has a left arm, and I go to my doctor and I say, please cut off my left arm because I do not have a left arm, I should not have a left arm, my doctor would not immediately sign me up for therapy for hormones or schedule me for that appointment to have my left arm cut off of my body. I'm sure that I would be immediately referred to or sent to API or a therapist to see why I have this mental incapacity to be able to determine why I think I don't have a left arm. This is no different than what we are hearing here being expressed to us today. Ironically enough, most people would consider the ideology of the transgender community, which this ordinance or bill or whatever it is classified in the school board, does not call transgenderism out anywhere within it. It clearly states that it is to protect our athletes, our students, in the sports that they biologically are designated as. If you are someone or a person who thinks that you are someone that is not of the biological sex that you were born, that is why we have co-ed sports. So you can compete against a biological difference than what you currently are. Thank you for your time, for allowing me to speak here today. I really do hope this passed. Our children really do need protection from the indoctrination of the groomers that are out there in our world today. Thank you.
Hello, school board. My name is Chelsea Heinsohn. I'm against the action to ban transgender youth from school sports. I have an important question. Why are you, as adults, so concerned with the genitalia of children? If a child identifies as a transgender male or female, then that is their business and nobody else's. How are you going to figure out who is transgender and who isn't? The only way would be to forcibly out these young, emotional, and desperate kids who only want to feel comfortable in their skin. This would be traumatic and cause irreversible damage for the rest of their lives. Keeping children safe from emotional and sexual abuse is far more important than the number of points scored in any sporting event. Ask yourself if anything comes before the safety of your child, and you have your answer as to how to vote for this issue, which has only been made an issue due to the sheer discrimination towards transgender people. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zayla Robert, and I am not a transgender youth. I am LGBTQ. I use any pronouns. And I just want to say that I've never felt so loved and so hated in the same room. And I didn't even know that adults could support LGBTQ. That is such a new concept to me, to hear and see adults or people or adults that have been fully transitioned come up to the podium and speak for something that's on my side is just such a powerful thing for me as an LGBTQ youth to witness. And I can only imagine how incredibly powerful it will be for transgender people to feel that same thing by feeling like they're being reassured in the sport and the team that they identify with. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emily Gibson. I am not very prepared, but I'm just going to come out and say it. So I have my degree in women's and gender studies. I'm imagining that you're imagining that I'm going to say that we should go along and let people be in whatever sport group that they want to be in, but that's not the case at all. There are physical differences between men and women. That's been proven over and over again, and seen even in professional sports today. It's not hard to see the differences. I also just want to say that I was raised by someone that identifies as queer. I was adopted by them. I support all of you here. I think you're very brave for coming forward and speaking about what you feel is right. But as several people have mentioned here today, women's sports needs to be protected. We've worked for decades to get here where we are today, and it seems like it's all gonna be for nothing if we're just letting anybody join the women's team. So I'm just here to advocate that there be an open or co-ed group that people can join that identify with as whatever they identify as, queer, transgender, whatever, male, female. Let's keep girls allowed to compete with other girls and not have to worry about somebody with other genitals coming into their locker room, for example. I know. Anyways, yeah, please just keep an open class or a co-ed class, because my daughter doesn't need to have some boy or whatever they identify as in the room with her when she's changing. I mean, that's private. That's not something that she needs to be subjected to. Okay, and like I said, women have been working for some hundreds of years to get where we are today. So let's not just throw it out the window. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Joshua Hansen. Women's sports, man, for women. I applaud you guys with the bill. Thank you.
Nobody else in the audience at the podium. We would like to thank all of those who have come out to please.
Hi, my name is Rachel Moyer. In regards to this transgender out of girls sports, I'd like to acknowledge that I am what you call I don't know, I've been called a butch female a lot of my life, and I have gone up against girls in swimming, diving, soccer. I help out with the youth in one of my local churches, and we play very rough games. I've had girls quit playing games with me, rough games where we're tackling each other because I am too aggressive. I am 5'7", 130 pounds, and I've had girls sit on the sideline because they did not want to play with me because I was too aggressive. And I was just having fun. I love playing those games. And I'd like to bring up a few points here. I am a young person speaking out about transgender female sports, just to set the record clear. And Caitlyn Jenner also talks about the fact that it is not fair for a trans man to woman to be playing in female sports. Transgender, right there. Fallon Fox is another great example as to why we should not be having men in women's sports. Fallon Fox has beat the crap out of a couple opponents before ever in MMA, before ever acknowledging that he was a transgender to female. They had no idea they were going up against a male. I have knocked people over in soccer many, many, many times. You can body slam. You may not be able to push, but you can still body slam, and we do. If a boy were to come up and body slam me, I could end up in the hospital. I can end up in the hospital if a female body slams me. But if a male comes up and body slams me, I have a much, much higher chance. I'm going to read you a little bit bit of information. 9-year-old males are 10% faster over short sprints than their female classmates. 16% faster over 1 mile, can jump 10% further, do 33% more push-ups, and have 14% stronger grip than 9-year-old females. Performance differences are even seen in children as young as 6 years old, where males can perform 16% more shuttle runs and jump 10% further. With all these performance differences from young children ranging in elite athletes, what would happen if male and female divisions are abolished and anyone could compete against anyone? Well, we would likely see the end of female competing in any high-level sport, and this is not an exaggeration. Here's why. The world record 100-meter sprint time for females is 10.49 seconds. The 100-meter sprint record in boys category is 10.15 seconds, set by a 16-year-old boy. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else at the podium, is there anybody? We will, seeing none again, seeing none, we will go ahead and close public comments on action items and non-action items. With that, we will go ahead and take a 5-minute break and proceed into action items. Thank you.
I listen to the Ben Shapiro show, at least the free version of it, every single day. Yeah, I've watched all the premieres that they've had so far with the What is a Woman, and
I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, I implore everybody to actually watch it before they make a decision. It's just
keep an open mind. That's. I mean, I love his book, Johnny the Walrus. I even ordered one in just so I had a copy of it.
I got one.
But yeah, I mean, it really boils down to. I mean, it's kind of like the analogy that I made there. Let me cut. I don't identify as I'm a harmless person, and my left arm doesn't exist, and I want my doctor to cut it off. What is my doctor going to do? I mean, there is no difference between the discussion of anything else compared to that. The piece that I couldn't get out there is well, do we allow 2-year-olds to smoke? Do we allow 2-year-olds to drink? Do we allow anybody that's under the age of 18 to do any of these things? Why not? Because they're not mature enough to make those decisions. Well, what makes them mature enough to castrate themselves with chemicals? What makes them mature enough to disfigure themselves?
By proxy, whatever it is called. I could never say it. Absolutely. I agree with that.